In the spring of 2010, while most people were still convinced the economy was broken beyond repair, a postal worker in Phoenix made a choice that looked foolish to almost everyone around him. The market had been battered for what felt like forever. Banks had failed. Unemployment had surged. People had watched their retirement accounts get shredded, their home values collapse, and their sense of safety vanish. News anchors spoke in the tone people use for natural disasters. Every week seemed to bring another warning, another reason to stay on the sidelines, another expert insisting that caution was the only rational option. A man named Daniel had spent years saving $40,000 to buy a small rental condo. He had skipped family vacations, picked up extra holiday shifts, and driven the same faded sedan until the air conditioning barely worked. That money represented progress. It represented control. It represented a chance to move one step ahead in life. And then he did something that sounded absurd. Instead of using the money for a down payment, he put the entire amount into a broad stock market index fund. His coworkers told him he was nuts. His brother said he was throwing away years of sacrifice. His mother begged him to wait until the market stopped acting crazy. Daniel listened to all of them and ignored every word. He was not a stock picker. He did not have a fancy degree in finance. He did not know where the market would be 6 months later. He simply believed that fear had pushed asset prices into territory ordinary people rarely get the chance to buy. That decision changed his life. Over the years that followed, the market did far more than recover. It surged. What looked like financial ruin eventually became one of the most powerful wealth-building periods in modern history. Daniel's $40,000 did not just grow a little. It multiplied many times over. And he was not unique. That is the point people often miss when they look back at major financial turning points. The biggest wealth-building moments do not always feel exciting while they are happening. They usually feel uncomfortable, uncertain, messy. The opportunity is hidden inside the panic. And most people never act because they are waiting for clarity that only arrives in hindsight. Something similar is happening again now. This time, the opportunity is not centered on a dramatic market collapse. It is centered on something quieter, larger, and potentially even more powerful: a historic transfer of wealth already moving through the American economy. The number attached to this shift is hard to even say out loud without it sounding exaggerated. Roughly $120 trillion is expected to move from one generation to the next over the coming decades. That is not a headline designed for shock value. It is one of the largest wealth transitions ever recorded, a financial tide so large that its effects will reach far beyond the families directly receiving money. And that last part matters most, because many people hear wealth transfer and immediately think this is just a story about inheritance. It is not. Inheritance is only the surface. The deeper story is what happens when a vast amount of capital starts moving through households, estates, trusts, property markets, investment accounts, advisory firms, businesses, charities, and entire sectors of the economy. Money does not stay still when it changes hands. It gets sold, it gets reinvested, it gets reallocated, it gets spent, it gets donated. It gets shifted from one generation's priorities into another generation's priorities. And every time that happens at scale, opportunity gets created. That is what made the years after the financial crisis so powerful. The people who became wealthy were not mostly high-frequency traders or billionaire founders. They were regular savers who stayed in the game while fear dominated the conversation. They kept putting money into retirement accounts. They kept buying broad market funds. They kept participating while other people froze. Teachers, nurses, police officers, engineers, electricians, office managers, small business owners, ordinary people built extraordinary wealth through repetition, patience, and exposure to a long period of rising asset prices. The current moment has the potential to do something similar, but through a different mechanism. This time, the force comes from demographics. Older Americans still hold a massive share of the country's wealth. Decades of home appreciation, stock market growth, business ownership, pensions, and retirement savings concentrated a huge amount of capital in one generation. That generation is now aging into the phase of life where money begins moving outward. Some of it passes first to spouses, some goes to children and grandchildren. Some goes to charities. Some gets used to settle estates. Some gets liquidated because heirs do not want the same assets their parents held. Some gets redirected into completely different investments. That last part is crucial. The money is not just transferring, it is changing direction. And when capital changes direction on that scale, it reshapes everything around it. Asset prices respond. Certain industries grow faster, different types of housing become more desirable, advisory services expand, estate planning becomes more important, investment preferences shift, business funding patterns change, entire regions feel the impact differently. That is why this is not merely a family story. It is an economy story. Most people are not going to wake up to millions landing in their checking account. Wealth transfers are highly concentrated. A relatively small share of families will receive truly life-altering inheritances. Many others will receive modest amounts or nothing at all. So if you are waiting for a rich relative to transform your future, that is not a strategy. But if you understand that trillions of dollars in motion create rising demand, changing preferences, and broad economic tailwinds, then you can position yourself to benefit even without inheriting a fortune directly. That is the real opportunity. It is not just the money that moves into heirs' hands. It is what that money does next. Some of it will flow into financial markets, pushing up asset values and benefiting people who are already invested. Some of it will move into housing, helping heirs buy homes, bid up desirable neighborhoods, or reposition inherited real estate. Some of it will flow into businesses, startups, and private investments, creating jobs and new service demand. Some of it will expand entire professions: financial planning, estate administration, tax strategy, trust management, legal advisory, probate work, real estate services, and wealth consulting. That means the opportunity exists on multiple levels. You can benefit as an investor. You can benefit as a homeowner. You can benefit as a professional in an industry tied to capital movement. You can benefit as a business owner serving people whose financial lives are being reshaped by inheritance and transition. Another factor makes this shift even more interesting. Younger generations do not think exactly like the generation that built the wealth. Older investors often leaned toward dividend-paying blue chips, paid-off homes, bonds, and conservative allocations. Younger investors tend to show more interest in technology, innovation, healthcare transformation, digital platforms, private markets, sustainability themes, and newer financial tools. Their preferences are not identical to their parents. So inherited wealth is unlikely to remain parked in all the same places. It will move. And when capital moves from one set of priorities to another, some sectors gain strength while others lose relative momentum. That creates openings for people paying attention. Real estate is one obvious example. Some regions with older populations may see more homes hit the market as estates get settled. Other places that attract younger professionals and families may experience stronger demand as inherited money becomes down payments, renovation budgets, or full purchases. The same thing can happen in financial services. When huge amounts of wealth need to be organized, taxed, transferred, protected, and invested, the people who understand those systems become more valuable. That is why certain professions are likely to benefit dramatically throughout this period. The transfer does not just reward heirs, it rewards everyone positioned to help wealth move efficiently. And still, the simplest winning strategy may be the one people keep overlooking. Stay invested, not in a frantic, speculative way, not by trying to guess every sector winner, not by searching for magic, just consistently, broadly, patiently. That is what worked after the crisis years. It is what has worked across most major wealth creation periods. And it is what is likely to keep working as this transfer unfolds. A person who steadily invests every month over the next 20 to 25 years may benefit from a combination of forces that are unusually powerful: rising asset prices, new capital entering markets, economic activity tied to wealth movement, changing real estate demand, business formation, and stronger long-term participation in productive assets. That does not mean the path will feel smooth. It almost never does. That is another lesson history keeps repeating. Wealth-building eras rarely feel glorious while you are inside them. They feel noisy. There are always reasons to worry. There will be recessions, scares, corrections, political crises, and media narratives insisting the opportunity is over. The years after the financial crisis felt like that. The market kept climbing, but fear never fully disappeared. The same will likely be true during this transfer period. There will be interruptions, there will be volatility, there will be moments when people once again insist that this time is different, and maybe some details will be different. But large pools of capital still need somewhere to go. That is the force underneath the noise. So, what does positioning actually look like? It looks like maximizing tax advantaged accounts where possible. It looks like broad exposure to equities instead of waiting forever in cash. It looks like developing skills in industries tied to wealth movement. It looks like maintaining liquidity so you can act when temporary disruptions create value. It looks like thinking in decades instead of headlines. It looks like understanding where money is likely to concentrate geographically and professionally. And it looks like having real conversations inside families about planning, beneficiaries, estate structure, and long term goals. None of this is secret. That may be the most important part. Just like the opportunity after the crash was visible to anyone willing to act, this shift is not hidden behind some locked door. The broad facts are public, the scale is documented, the timeline is underway. Yet most people still will not position themselves. Some will be distracted. Some will be cynical, wait for a perfect entry point that never announces itself. Some will keep assuming the future will become clear later. But later is where most opportunities become obvious only after the biggest gains are gone. Daniel did not know in 2010 that his decision would one day look wise. He only knew that public fear had made ownership look unattractive at the exact moment ownership was becoming more powerful. That same principle applies now. A massive transfer of wealth is underway. It will create winners. It will create opportunities for patient investors, skilled professionals, and prepared households. It will reward people who understand that money in motion reshapes entire systems, not just bank balances. The question is not whether this shift will happen. It is already happening. The real question is whether you will spend the next 2 decades close enough to the flow of capital to benefit from it, or whether you will look back later and realize you watched one of the biggest wealth building periods of your lifetime from the sidelines.